What? 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 What?
All right, 2020 has been probably the roughest year for businesses that we ever seen, and maybe that's completely, the biggest understatement we've ever said here on the Social Media Lab live show. Shutdowns and restrictions on capacity have basically, killed a lot of businesses around the globe. But does that mean that there's absolutely no chance to succeed during the, these quote unquote trying times? That's something we're going to talk about today here in the Social Media Lab. And my special guest, who I'm calling Tony G, we're going to talk a little bit about how you can still be successful with your business during the middle of a global pandemic. So you're going to want to kind of stick around, listen to what we've got to say. This is going to be a little bit deeper maybe than what we talk about in typical social media stuff, as far as like emojis and likes and comments and hashtags and all that. We're really hoping to give you some advice here to help your business move forward into 2021 and succeed. So make sure you stick around for this episode of the Social Media Lab Live.
Are you ready to use science to bust some myths in the social media ecosystem?
Great Scott!
Welcome to the Social Media Lab Live, brought to you by Agorapulse, where our social media scientists experiment on real accounts to crack the code on social media success for your business.
What?
Now your hosts, Scott Ayers.
All right, everyone, welcome to today's episode of the Social Media Lab Live. I am Scott Ayers, the content scientist here at the Social Media Lab, where we bust the myths, the rumors, and the stories of social media marketing with science. And as I mentioned kind of in our opening intro hook there, we're going to talk today all about business and how your business can succeed even in the middle of crisis, in the middle of a global pandemic. So what I kind of want to know, if you're watching right now at the start of the show, how is your business doing in 2020? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it up? Is it down? I would love to know, and I think that will help us and our guest Tony. You kind of decide how we're going to kind of take this conversation over the next hour. So let me know in the comments, how is your business doing? What kind of business are you in? I think that would be good for us to know about. And it's a couple of things to kind of keep in mind as we are watching today's show. Don't forget, you can read everything that we do here at the lab. If you run over to agorapulselab.com, it'll take you over to our website. You can read our experiments. You can listen to our podcasts and all the things that we've got going on over there. And of course, we are part of Agora Pulse. I mean, the lab, while we kind of have our own separate identity, to some regards, Agora Pulse is the main reason we are here and the main reason I'm even talking to you today. So I want to make sure that you run over to, and I'll put the link into the comments. Make sure you run over to agorapulse.com/live. That'll let you sign up for a free 28-day trial for Agora Pulse, where you can use it to post your content to social media, manage all your comments, add comments, mentions, all that kind of stuff. And I will admit, I do not do a very good job sometimes of selling Agora Pulse. I use it every single day, but I'm not the salesman, even though I'm kind of the mascot for it. So watch this short little video for me here. I think this will help you learn a little bit more about Agora Pulse.
Agora Pulse provides your team with all the social media management tools your brand needs. Start optimizing engagement of posts with saved hashtags, post preview, and customized video thumbnails. Have full control over your incoming conversations with date pickers, filters, and automation rules, so that you don't have to worry about missing important messages. Maximize the ROI of your content strategy. Find out instantly which of your posts are bringing in the most engagement and when you should be posting your best content. On a team, find out who's keeping on top of messages in your inbox. Get complete insight into your brand's publishing schedule. Oversee scheduled content with our workflow and shared calendar options. Agora Pulse offers support 24/7 with an average response time of 20 minutes. Keep your team's skill set strong with Social Media Management School and the Agora Pulse Academy, both absolutely free with your subscription. Find out why brands come to us and stay.
All right, so as soon as this live show's over, run over to agorapulse.com/live and you can grab your free trial. Like I said, it's a 28-day free trial, and there's actually a coupon code on there that I'm giving you. It's just exclusive for those who watch our live show, where you can actually get 2 months for free once you sign up for a paid plan. So agorapulse.com/live. I want to check out some of the comments that have come in. Eddie Garrison, my man Eddie, I love you, everything that you do, Eddie. Eddie says, "Hey Scott, for my own experience, this year was the best year for my business I've had in 5 years." And that's awesome, Eddie. I know Eddie has taken on some really huge clients in the local marketing business that he does, and maybe in some franchises, if I'm correct. So Eddie's had a great year, and that's great to hear. Danny says, "Had the best month in November." That's good to hear, because November, December sometimes is kind of meh for people in business. So that's great to hear that you're having a great November. Eddie also says, as a social media manager, brands finally understood just how important having a social media presence was when this happened back in March. Man, how true is that? I think a lot of people kind of ignored the organic side of social quite a bit, and then the pandemic hit, and they went, oh, crud. I can't do anything else. I'm closed. I still got to communicate, and now people have woke up. And I think those in the social media marketing space and who call themselves social media managers have really leveraged this and done really, really well in the middle of this. And I do see 2 comments from someone in a group, and we are going live in multiple places using Restream. Sorry your name is not there. Restream is working on that. If you want to come over to the main link and video, I can pull in your name. But this says here, my business has grown greatly this year. Thank you, COVID. And they have a marketing agency. And that's good to hear. I think COVID, I think a lot of us are like, COVID's been so awful and it's bad for my business, blah, blah, blah. But I will say for me personally, I was telling someone this privately earlier, a friend of mine, like 2020 has maybe been the best year I've ever had on a personal level, a spiritual level, and a financial level. 2020 has been just fantastic for me. And so that's why I'm excited to bring on our guest. And I'm going to bring him over here if I can remember where to grab the thing and push it. There's Tony. I said he was Tony G earlier. It's Tony Guarnaccia. I think I got that right. Tony Guarnaccia. And if you don't know who Tony is, Tony has helped thousands and thousands of businesses, survive different crises, whether it was, 9/11, the Great Recession, or, all kinds of massive company acquisitions. And he's kind of taken on this mantra of, to democratize marketing, and really has a passion for helping businesses grow in the middle of a crisis. So, Tony, welcome to the Social Media Lab Live.
Thanks so much for having me here today.
I appreciate you being on here, and hopefully, I said earlier, like I'm gonna call you Tony G because my brain works that. But he gave it. Funny thing was, and this is like if anybody's from the 80s or 90s, I'm old. I'm in my mid 40s, so like Tony's like it's Guarnaccia, and I went, oh, Gwar. There's this old heavy metal band named Gwar, and now it's automatically stuck in my head. So yeah, Tony, tell us a little bit. Like, let's say people watching or watching the replay later. If they don't know who you are, what is like if you walk into the elevator, at a hotel and someone says, hey, what do you do? What's your 60-second elevator pitch?
Yeah, so it's real simple. I really focus on 3 things: helping businesses understand and identify what problems are keeping them stuck so they can know how to fix those issues and then effectively solve them. Because to have success, you really need to understand what your problem is, how to fix it, and then take action. Those 3 things aligned, then you're going to have success. So I help businesses do that.
Yeah, I like that. And Eddie even says, Gwar, I've seen them like a dozen times. Eddie, you and I got to talk. That's I did not know that. I did not know Eddie was a headbanger and a metal enthusiast. So that's kind of funny that that he brought that up. So so Tony, I've got to ask you before we hop into the questions that we have for today, what the heck is behind you right now, and what's going on back there? It's a lot for my brain to take in.
Yeah, so this is my strategic planning framework. So I mentioned before, I really help with 3 areas: the what, the how, and the action. Most businesses don't understand the what. And in the corporate world, they call it strategic plans, a very scary word. And a lot of people don't plan because it's complicated, it's costly, there's a lot to it. And so what I did was I took all my experience working with some great companies like Ford and Google and ADP, all these amazing companies, and I distilled kind of the essence of what it takes to grow into just 6 steps. And that's what these 6 steps are right here.
So you just kind of keep that behind you to remind you every day? Is that kind of the idea, or the work through it with clients? Is that what that's there for?
Yeah, I mean, this is actually a whiteboard, so I can literally brainstorm right on this. And as a matter of fact, one of the inspirations behind this, of all things, was my daughter's Girl Scout troop. Okay. I literally took the Girl Scouts through this process, and they dramatically increased their cookie sales after just 15 minutes. Anyone can do this, and you can do it with a piece of paper. But I'm a big whiteboarder. So I use this on the other side. I'm always whiteboarding when my kids aren't drawing on it, of course. but that's kind of what I like, because I can just put in what I want to do and how I'm going to pivot, how I'm going to grow it just in really quickly. That's very cool. And Eddie he loves that it's all right there in one page. And I love that idea, like where you can just erase it. You can talk to clients and work through it. That's super, super smart. So if you're just now joining us, we're talking here with Tony Guarnaccia.
and we're going to talk about ways you as a business in the middle of crisis, and obviously in 2020, COVID-19 has kind of impacted all of us, whether it's our businesses, whether it's our families, our livelihood. I know people who've lost jobs. I know people who lost loved ones. I personally, right now, as of the recording of this at 12 o'clock here in Texas, my dad is in the hospital with COVID, who's a nursing home patient. A lot of people are dealing with COVID. So it's very real. This is a very real thing to talk about, and I appreciate Tony hopping on here to do this. Kind of a sensitive topic for a lot of us, but I think it's important. I think it's important to kind of figure out, what do we do now? Do we just kind of throw our hands up and give up, or we move on? I think the successful businesses move on. So what we're going to do is I'm going to walk Tony through a couple of questions and kind of get his input on that. And kind of, if you have any questions while you're watching, let us know in the chat, and we'll kind of talk through those questions that come through. And the first thing I want to ask you, Tony, is we know that right now that resources such as time, or effort or energy or money are very, very tight for a lot of people. And what can a business do right now in the middle of, the weirdest year we've ever had? What can they do right now to grow?
Yeah, and that's a great question. So I think the first thing to understand is that wherever we are today, like it or not, so much of it is a result of the decisions we made in the past. And really a different way to put that is how we're prioritizing. So at any given point in time, you have to prioritize how you're spending your time, how you're leveraging your effort, and how you're spending your money. And so depending on the stage of your business and what the situation is, you have to decide which one of those you want to prioritize. So for instance, if I'm looking to scale a company and take it to the next level, the money isn't as important as maybe the time, because you want to constrict time and grow faster. If we're in a time like this where maybe you're in crisis, you want to do the opposite and kind of prioritize the money over the effort and your time. And so the key thing, if you're in crisis, is to really manage your cash, and that really comes down to your profitability and your cash flow.
Now, let's say I'm profitable right now, which would be rare for some. Now, granted, I told somebody the other day, someone posted something on social like, what would you do if you look back at 2019? What would you do for 2020? I'm like, I would buy stock in Charmin toilet paper because it was a hot commodity. But so where should we be investing our profits right now?
Yeah, so well, it depends on where you want to go, but if you have a sustainable business that can grow, you want to plow as many of your profits back into the company if possible. You want to also have diversity, but just specific to a business, your profitability, you want to save a certain percent, because God forbid, this is one of the reasons a lot of businesses got in trouble in the first place. They didn't have enough cash reserves, but assuming you have cash reserves, then you want to make sure you're prioritizing where that money goes into, and it can go into different areas. You can go into getting new customers, clients, or patients. A lot of times, the best investment, though, is focusing on getting more loyalty from your existing customers. Right. Maybe you invest in client support and customer support. So it's really a matter of prioritization. And that's really what I created the results loop for, is to help people prioritize, because it's not just a matter of do I invest or not. It's really the key question is, where am I investing it?
Now, you said something that kind of just, tickled my brain a little bit. You talk about having a cash reserve.
Yeah.
Now, I know there's no, cookie cutter model for this, but is there a, minimum percentage of business profit that a business should maybe be holding on to that you would recommend?
Yeah, ideally 6 months is probably the best.
Okay.
And we're all, gosh, I'm guilty as this too, because I was focusing so much on growth. I'm not perfect with this either, but the honest answer is probably 6 months. That's probably the best place to do, because that gives you enough of a cushion.
So 6 months, that would cover all your expenses, basically?
Yeah, you want to look at, but also is relative to your profitability. So if you have a very profitable company, you're going to be more sustainable. That's why it's so important to have profits, because if you have a very small profit margin, like these restaurants, they have a very narrow profit margin, and so there's less leeway. If you have a bigger profit margin, you actually have more time. So you kind of have a double whammy. You have more time, but also you have more to invest because of your profitability. So a lot of times you want to focus on, how can I make my business as profitably as possible? And a lot of times you do that by, it's really simple. How much is coming in and how much is going out? in terms of, managing how much you're expending, this is where you want to have really good systems, processes, tools, etc., can help you make more profits.
Now, I mean, 6 months. Now, how many do you? I don't know if you have a number here because I love data, but do you think most businesses have 6 months?
No.
I mean,
No.
what do you like for the people you deal with? What do most? I think of my own personal family.
Yeah.
I'm like a month. I've got a month. If I were to lose all my income tomorrow, I've got like a month or two, and I've got to go work at McDonald's. So I mean, how do most businesses look? Probably.
Well, statistically, I've looked at this in a while, and it's probably going to change post-COVID because people have learned a hard lesson. I think we all have, but I would venture to say, less than 10%, lucky if it's 2%, because if you look at the average businesses, I forget the number right now, but I think was it 90%, 80% of businesses fail within 10 years.
Right.
There's a variety of reasons, but one of them is cash.
Yeah, I think most of us don't plan ahead. We think, wow, we'll worry about it later. But like we always talk about, you always hear about the rainy day fund. I mean, 2020, it's a rainy day.
Yeah.
I mean, I know local restaurants especially that had to shut down. They really hurt. And I know Eddie, who's made a lot of comments. He does a lot of business in the marketing for restaurants in the Orlando area. And so some have done really well, some haven't, some really struggled, some pivoted. And I think that's really important. I think that kind of leads us over to our next question here. If you're just joining us, we're talking to Tony Guarnaccia about how your business can survive during a crisis. And obviously 2020 is all about COVID, but we're going to have more crises after COVID. We had 9/11 back 19 years, almost 20 years ago. We're going to have more and more crises as we continue to go. It's just the way the world is. But what are some small changes other than holding back 6 months of funds, which would be nice? What are some small changes that business can do right now, December, what is today, the 9th, 2020, to bring in more cash to their business?
Yeah, so the first thing you want to do is manage your expenses. So when COVID hit, the first thing I did was got my credit card statement, went through it and said, okay, which things can I eliminate? Which things can I negotiate in terms of calling up the vendor and saying, can I get a better rate? I called up a hosting company and they discounted me for several months just by making a phone call. And then in other cases, I actually increased what I spent. So for instance, I use QuickBooks. I was paying monthly and I looked at it and I said, look, I'm going to use this all year. Why not just buy the year plan and get a discount? So just going through that exercise is a way to manage what's going out. Then you want to look at what's coming in. So in terms of what's coming in, you always, success begets success. Mm-hmm. So I look at where you're having success today and do more of that. It's very simple. But then also look at the past. So if you have an agency, because I know Eddie mentioned he has an agency, I go back to my old clients that maybe aren't with me today from 5 years ago and see if they might be back in market. Just have a conversation, see how you can add value to them, or even going back to past prospects that didn't close for whatever reason, going back to them. So a lot of times your success comes from where you've had success in the past.
I like that idea of like reaching out to the people, the vendors that you're doing business with already. Now, granted, they're struggling too. Yeah. But say, hey, I'm struggling. I still love you. I want to stay on as a customer, but can you help me out here? Yeah. I think that's an interesting, and renegotiating interest rates or, maybe your rent on your business. There's probably a lot of little things there that kind of came into play because people, especially I think about the brick and mortars. Like I have a lot of friends who now work from home. I've worked from home for 10 years or remotely for 10 years or so. But they're all working from home and they're freaking out because they've never done it before. They've been in the office. But those people who own rental property in the business, in the commercial space, man, they're hurting. Yeah. And I know, like, I rent a little office where I'm at. That guy will do anything I ask him because he does not want me to leave because he needs the revenue. And so if I say, hey, dude, I need you to cut back 20% of my bill, I bet you he'd probably say, yeah, just to keep me because he can't find anybody else to fill the space. So I think that idea of just asking, it doesn't hurt to ask. No. I think everybody knows they're hurting a little bit, but it's better to have, I'd rather have 80% of a piece of pie than 0% of it. And I think that's a really smart thing to do. I want to check out the comments you may send. I don't see any comments over there right now. But if you're just joining us, see people popping in and out. I'm talking to Tony Guarnaccia. We're talking about different ways you as a business can succeed during the middle of the crisis. And I like this idea here of little changes. Those little changes make a big difference in the long run. And I think the third thing we want to talk about kind of plays into this question quite a bit. Is what is the one thing small business should be doing during a crisis like COVID, but probably aren't doing?
Yeah, so I kind of hit on this before, but
Yeah.
to have success, you really need three things. You need to know what to do, how to do it, and then take action. So many small businesses, they get into the how. How do I launch a podcast? How do I do social media? How do I do SEO? Where the most successful companies, the Fortune 500 companies, focus first on a strategy. So they come up with a strategy with 20 people in a room, with a 20-tab spreadsheet, with contingencies. If this happens, we're going to do this. If this happens, we're going to do that. Average person spends more time planning their birthday, their wedding, their vacation than they do their life and their business. And so the one thing I would suggest that people do is come up with a strategic plan. And it doesn't have to be fancy. That's why I created this system here. It's really just 6 steps. Focus on those 6 things and you'll hit your goals.
So kind of just real quick, 'cause it is behind you there. We can I'm like trying to zoom in and read it a little bit.
Yeah.
What are, I know we don't want to give away all the secrets, and we'll post a link to some of the things that you do here later, but what are those, can you give us a quick overview of those 6 steps?
Yeah. So the first step you want to look at is the market you're serving. So who specifically is buying your product? And so to go back to that Girl Scout analogy, the first question I asked the Girl Scouts was, who's your market? Who buys your cookies? Right. And of course they said mom and dad. Then you had the neighborhood. Then someone thought, boy, my mom's yoga studio has them. All of a sudden that triggered ideas for the other people in the group, the other kids, to say, hey, my mom's also a yoga studio. No one's going to them. So it's a great exercise to figure out how you can grow, because you can't hit a target you haven't defined. So the first step in all marketing and growth and sales is to define who you're going to serve.
I dig that. I think that goes back to, have you ever done any what they call like jobs to be done?
Yeah.
I always get that wrong. JTDP, jobs to be, JTB, whatever. You know what I mean? JTBD. Yes. But I mean, yeah, you got to think about who is your market? How does this product solve it? And think back to that. So like as a business, think of how am I solving a problem right now in the middle of COVID? So if you're a local pizza business, you're supplying people. Yeah, you're supplying with pizza, but you're really supplying with some comfort. You're supplying them with something they know. And so you've got to pivot and go, okay, now I've got to have an app to order from. I've got to have, contactless delivery or pickup. Yeah. You've got to kind of think through those sort of things. And that's probably where you're going with that, is who do you serve and how can you kind of pivot a little bit to do better for your business. Now, the next question I have for you is one that we have not rehearsed. Like, typically on guests I'll ask them, they'll give me some questions and I'll say, hey, I'll ask those questions. I'll make them my own. But I told Tony, like, I've got one question I'm going to ask you that you had not prepared for. And I think it's a big one. It's a hot topic. Even right now at the end of 2020 is, should businesses take bailout money? I know right now it's a really hot topic. Especially right now, we've got large corporations we're finding out that took the bailout money to pay for their, was it PPE or whatever it is? I may get that wrong, but should I, if I'm a business and I've got a lot of employees, should I take this bailout money? What's it going to do to me?
Yeah, no, I think of it in terms of almost like tax exemptions. I think if you have a business, it's your duty to do everything you can to maximize the profitability of that company. And if that means taking out bailout money, especially as a small business, now some of these huge corporations, that could be questionable. But the purpose of this was to help businesses sustain themselves through this crisis. If you're a business that's in that crisis, you should absolutely be taking care of the business. Right. I myself took out the PPE, which will hopefully be a grant. Right now it's a loan, but it'll be turned into a grant. But absolutely, I think it's our duty to do everything we can to sustain the business, because ultimately, if you have a business that's alive and sustainable, that not just impacts you, impacts your community, impacts essentially the world. So you want to have a company that's sustainable, not just for your own selfish interests, but you have employees. There's all these people that are impacted by that, and that's really the purpose of the bailout. Will people abuse it? Absolutely. Right. But the people that are doing it with integrity should absolutely take the bailout.
Now, because you've done it, I'm going to kind of pick your brain a little bit.
Yeah.
So, how did that process work? Were you like, what was the maximum allowed? You don't have to give us numbers, but
Yeah.
maybe did you have to prove how much your expenses were, employee costs? How did that kind of work, and what should a business think about when they're looking at that?
Sure. I did that very early on, so I'm trying to remember. Like literally, I'm pretty fanatical with like detail and getting things done quickly. So literally, I think we were one of the first in the country to get it when it first came out. And so for us, the process was pretty smooth. But from what I remember, it was basically based on how many employees you had. And they also took into account things like office space and things like that. But the core component of the expenses was really wrapped around employees, because the reason they did this, if you have to look at the motive of the government, what they were trying to do is avoid layoffs. And so the money was really because the reality is that money would go out either way. It either go out from people claiming unemployment benefits, or it'd come out through the business.
That's a good point.
So the business was essentially the proxy for unemployment insurance.
Yeah, my only thought there, and this is just my personal opinion, this is not the opinion of Agora Pulse, is, I worry about these businesses that are doing people are doing the loans, and so they're still paying their employees, which is great. They're taking care of their workers. But then as a worker, we got in the U.S., we got one stimulus check. There may be another that comes early 2021. We're not really sure yet, but it's like double dipping. Almost. I almost feel like if you have a business, have taken out a loan to keep your employees employed, or let's say in our instance, our company is based out of France, and they've done a great job of keeping us afloat. None of us missed a paycheck, and we've been, sustained, and we've done really well through all this. So I didn't need the stimulus money. And the government did not do a good job of kind of figuring that whole thing out. I almost wonder if there's a way the government should have said, "Hey, all right, small business, you've paid your employees. We don't need to do the stimulus thing." I wonder if they'll come around to that. And you don't know the answer to that, probably, but it just kind of always floats in my mind. Is like there's a lot of people who are going to double dip like crazy. We're seeing it even now with people we know who are connected to the administration who have taken really big PPE loans and cashed out on them and taken advantage of it. I think as a small business, though, I mean, do you think it'll really be a grant? I mean, have you gotten any communication on that you're going to forgive it?
I think it will be. I think it's a lot of it's political. Nice. So hopefully it will be. I mean, right now the process, from what I understand, is very complicated. So I've actually waited to apply for the grant because I'm waiting for the dust to settle. Yeah. But my hope is that it will, because the amount of money was significant. It's essentially 3 months of expenses.
But you're already way past that now, right?
Oh yeah. Well, the way it was stipulated early on was you had to spend actually the 3 months in the 3 months. Okay. So you couldn't milk it, because most business owners would have had to extend 6 months if they could. But the way it was written initially, and they kept on changing the way it's written. I was early on the process. So when I first had it, it was literally you had to use it in the first 3 months.
Yeah. And so now we fast forward. We're like 9 months into this whole pandemic in the U.S. anyway, as far as like shutdowns, because all the shutdowns happened like early March. I remember it was spring break for us here in Texas, and I took my kids to one of our kids was actually sick the week before, so we didn't go anywhere. We were supposed to go to see Mount Rushmore, and we canceled that. Went to somewhere in Austin, Texas. Went to like a go-kart track and stuff. But we're watching the TVs in this place, and boom, the NBA season's shut down. Yeah. Golf's shut down. It's like March 8th, and we're like, what's going on? So, we're 9 months into this, so that 3 months is long gone. At this point. So, and there's some areas, like I've got friends in California where they're still completely shut down. There's nothing going on.
Yeah, it's a serious problem because a business can't be sustained like that. Like, in other words, if per our conversation before, you don't have 6 months. Most people don't have 6 months in reserve. So if you're, say a restaurant, because everybody seems to like that analogy, but if you're down to 20% capacity, what business can take an 80% cut without any other revenue? So it's unfortunate because a lot of businesses are not going to sustain through this without any kind of pivot because there's just no revenue there. It's not a workable problem.
Right. And like I used to run a pizza buffet restaurant. So I can relate 100%. Like if we had to go down to 20 25% capacity, I mean, why even open the doors?
Yeah.
It probably would have been if we had it'd have been one employee, maybe two, having to run the whole thing and take the whole burden and try to just adjust and do it. But that is something as a business though to think about. If you can pivot, maybe you have to have less employees. That's not the worst case scenario. At least you're staying open. And maybe paying your rent,
Yeah.
If you will. So the last thing I want to talk to you about is, and this is, I think, really applicable to anybody watching this or watching the replay later, is in your dealings, you've dealt with some really large companies, like you mentioned earlier, like I think ADP, Dell, some other big companies, Ford, I think was one you mentioned. What are businesses right now, December of 2020, that are crushing it in the middle of these crises?
Well, I think the most obvious thing is anyone that's moved to virtual, whether it's contactless services, look at Zoom, look what we're doing here today. I personally have moved my agency into a lot of things related to podcasting and streaming, building software and things like that to serve those industries. And so anyone that's pivoted is going to be winners. If you try to stay in the past and where you're at, a lot of times that isn't going to work. If you're profitable and you're killing it now, keep doing that. But, you can't put your head in the sand and pretend there's not a problem. You have to adapt to the situation and where the world's going.
Yeah, I think, all the live streaming softwares have done really well. Zoom, of course, became a house. Like Zoom is basically a verb now.
Yeah.
I guess it kind of is a Zoom. It was a verb as far as like the actual, if you Zoom on something, but like the softwares become like, we're going to go on a Zoom call. Hey, Zoom me. That my kids are on Zoom calls all the time. So that industry, I mean, they weren't ready for it, for one, and they've exploded. But even live software, like I'm using Restream to do this live show. And a cool thing that I've done with Restream, and I've had somebody with Restream do with me, is use it kind of Zoom-like, where okay, I'm already paying for the service. I won't go live. I can just when Tony, you came on, you were in the green room, if you will call it a green room. And I don't have to push the live button. I could just use Restream as a presentation software. I can have his meetings, and then you just leave when you're done and you're go. So I think a lot of software in that live industry have really kind of figured that out and realized that, okay, well, this is a need now. It's a weird thing that, even my wife, who's a kindergarten teacher, needs live software. Which was, I've been in this space for a very long time. And so I'm always talking, now I'm having to show her how to go live and what's a webcam, what's a microphone place, look like, where you need to put the microphone, you need lighting, you need this, you need that. But, I think that's where we're going now. But I do think as a business though, I mean, there's lots of different types who have done really well. And those who have pivoted, I think, have done the best.
For sure. Yeah, you have to adjust. If you don't adjust, you have it's the reality of the world. And you always have to know who are you serving, right?
True.
Because at one point, the railroads thought they were railroad companies. They were really transportation companies, right? Because they got overtaken by cars. Now the car industry, which I come from, I've done so much in the automotive industry.
Yeah, you said ADP. I sold cars. I know what ADP is.
It was the DMS system and Ford and General Motors. I worked with pretty much
100%.
all of them.
I knew what you meant when you said ADP.
Yeah, but the whole world's being shaken, in the automotive. Look at Tesla coming on board. So you have to adapt and know. This goes back to what we talked about before, your markets and your offerings. You have to understand who your market is and what you're actually providing them. What you're providing them is not necessarily the product or service, but the benefit that really, what I always say, people aren't buying your product and service. They're buying the result of the product and service.
Yeah, it goes back to that, jobs to be done sort of mentality. Like, what does your product solve? Like, if you've ever read any jobs to be done stuff, and I think you probably have, Tony.
Yeah.
But they surveyed people who are buying chocolate shakes at McDonald's, and what did that solve? Well, it got them a chocolate shake, but it wasn't really about the chocolate shake. It was more about the sense of how it made them feel. It filled their stomach. It made them full for a couple of hours. So what job does that chocolate shake do? And I think your business got to figure that out too, whether that's like my brother. I used to own a bounce house business, and I passed on my brother. My brother did really, really well this summer, even in the middle of COVID, because people wanted something to do in the middle of the pool industry. The pool industry crushed it in the United States this summer, especially with those stimulus checks. I was one who bought an above ground pool. and I couldn't find one for months, and because it was a hot industry, and they pivoted and they figured out, okay, let's appeal to these people who are looking. So I think your business can figure it out. I found all my local restaurants that I go to who never delivered before in their lives suddenly started delivering because they had to. They adapted. And I think that's what you have to do in your businesses. So any other tips here you would say that you'd want us to know about as a business of what you should do in the middle of a crisis?
Yeah, well, what I mentioned before in the results loop is the markets, but tied to that is the products and services. And a really good useful tool that I found is called the Ansov matrix. And so with this, you basically make a matrix and you map out your products and services against your markets. And you ask yourself the question, what products and services can I provide my existing markets? What product and services can I provide new markets? What existing markets can I provide to new products and services? So you just kind of make this 4-quadrant matrix. It's a very good brainstorming idea on how you can come up with your next innovation.
Sorry, I was in the middle of typing out your URL in the comments.
Yeah.
I put that up on the screen. Like, you can check out Tony's website, smallstepsgrowprofits.com, and there's actually a / that's really long in the comments, the manifesto. Great little resource to kind of know what if I were to go download that resource, what am I going to get from that?
Yeah, so if you go and there's a shortened URL, you can go to smallstepsmanifesto.com.
Oh, okay.
But when you go there, essentially you'll get a lot of the stories that I like to tell and some of the best advice I've learned over the years that's going to be in my new book. But the big thing that you get out of it is you get the templates for creating your own results loop absolutely free. And you also get my assessment. So you can go online. Anyone can go on there, resultsscore.com. You can also go that way. You go there, you can score yourself on the 6 factors of growth to figure out which one you should prioritize next, because we talked about time, money, and effort, how you prioritize those areas. This will tell you. This results score will tell you where to prioritize your effort.
Now, how did you figure out that formula? Like, how did you quantify it? How did you quantify a number to that?
Yeah, well, yeah, you're definitely the data guy. I love that because I'm a data person too. So essentially what I did was it's a survey base, and you score where you feel you're strong or weak. And what happens is if you do all 6 factors, you'll actually grow at exponential rate. So if I reverse engineered essentially what I've learned working with these great companies and why they actually grew. So there's actually a scientifically proven reason why Facebook grows so fast, Google grew so fast. It's a function of really these 6 factors. Once you get these down, especially the 3, which we can talk about, increasing the number of buyers, the size of those buyers, and the loyalty of those buyers. Mm-hmm. If you do all 6 or 5 factors even, you'll grow at 63% rate year over year. So you'll get actually an exponential growth curve.
Very cool. So make sure y'all run over to the website we posted in the comments, or go to smallstepsgrowprofits.com to kind of look at Tony's website. I really like the design of your website, by the way. It's very aesthetically pleasing, and it's got a lot of orange in it. And so
yes,
I like seeing that as well. So I want to move over real quick while we still got you, Tony, and do something that's just completely for fun. Has nothing to do with marketing or business, but it is a fun thing we do here on the show. We call it 5 questions, and basically what I do is, if you haven't checked this out and you're a podcaster, go to poddeckslab.com, and you'll get like a couple bucks off when you sign up. But Poddex does they have these decks of cards. They're literally decks of cards, and they've got 6 or 7 decks of cards that are random stuff. Some of them are like, if I can't figure out what my podcast should be about today, it gives you an episode guide. Some of it's would you rather. Some of it, one of them is literally called What the Heck, and they've got some interview ones. They also have apps now. Like, you can go to the iOS or Android stores and download their app. Really cool. And they got Travis. I've had him on the show before. Real cool guy in podcasting. It's a great idea. It's a little, at first I'm like, this is cheesy, but as far as a business, he pivoted as a business and went, okay, there's a need here. People want to figure out podcasting right now in the middle of 2020, but they're stuck on content. And these have been real fun for me to kind of ask people. So here's what I'm doing. I'm just going to ask. I have not rehearsed these with Tony. I'm just going to pull them out of the deck. And if you want to pass, say pass. Most people don't. I will throw away the ones that are maybe inappropriate for children. And I ask the questions, say whatever comes to mind, all right? All right, so here's 5 questions with Tony Guarnaccia here on the Social Media Lab. What's the funniest place you've ever fallen asleep?
Funniest place I've ever fallen asleep. I would say probably at a concert hall. You know, I used to be a violinist, a classically trained musician, professionally, semi-pro. And, you know, a couple times I fell asleep during an amazing concert, which hopefully I didn't snore too loud.
Very interesting. Very so like a train, like you played in concerts, you played in big things?
Yeah, the whole bit. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. So this is question 2, 5 questions with Tony G, as I've called him. If you were stranded on a desert island and you could choose one person to keep you company, who would it be?
Well, that's an easy one. I'm married, so it's my wife.
I was gonna say, if your wife listens to anything you do, you better say your wife. Now, what about an animal?
We'll see a comment come up real quickly. No, probably my lab. I have a lab dog.
Okay.
Marigold. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be kind of fun. All right, question 3 with Tony. 5 questions. If you had a personal mascot, what would it be?
Personal mascot. Well, I went to the University of Connecticut, so the first thing that came to mind is the Husky. You know, we're rabid basketball fans and like, you know, the Huskies. So that's the first thing that comes to mind.
The Huskies. All right. All right. Question number 4, 5 questions with Tony. Which living person do you most admire?
Probably my mother. She's got an amazing story of resilience, which I didn't get a chance to come in here and speak to today. But she's a overcomer of polio and couldn't walk, and she's actually an inspiration for my book, Small Steps to Grow Profits. So it's an amazing story that she has that you can see in that manifesto.
So is that where you get the name of the book?
Yeah, Small Steps, because she literally had to take one step
That's
at a time
awesome.
to be able to eventually wear high heels, which was her dream.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I really, really love that. All right. So, 5 questions. I'm trying to find one that'd be a good one to end on. So this time I am actually looking.
Okay.
All right. So 5 questions. Final question. What's something I would never guess about you?
Oh, gosh. Well, I mentioned before probably that I used to be a violinist. You know, that's kind of a passion I still have. I play actually in between while I'm working. Like I'll do a lot of data stuff, you know, like heavy thinking. I grab my violin between and play. And so that's kind of a very key part of me. The other crazy thing is some people think it's crazy. I don't. I have 6 kids.
Oh, wow.
So that's it's always an interesting time, especially right now.
Right.
Homeschooling them during COVID.
But what are the age ranges of the kids?
The youngest is 5. The oldest is 16.
Okay, so the 16-year-old takes care of the 5-year-old. That's how that works.
I wish.
I've got like a 10, 13, and 14-year-old. I make the 14-year-old take care of the 10-year-old quite a bit. Of course, I think he takes care of himself now more than anything. Well, very cool. Well, Tony, I appreciate you being on the show with me today and sharing some of your knowledge about business. Make sure you do go check out Tony's website. Smallstepsgrowprofits.com is probably the quickest way to get over to it. And Tony is hard. His last name is hard to spell. It's pronounced Guarnaccia. I said Nacho. Guarnaccia. Guarnaccia. If you happen to listen to this on a podcast later, I wanted to spell it out for anybody who was listening. So, Tony, I appreciate you being on the show with me today.
Yeah, thanks again. Appreciate it.
You bet. And that's going to end it for today's show. I really do appreciate all of you being on the show with me today. Make sure you do go check out Restream. Restream is what I use for all of my live videos. I actually just started a live video show with Restream on Mondays at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, talking all about live videos. Make sure you go to restreamlive.com. You can check out everything that they're doing and get $10 off whenever you sign up. And I'm really excited. Next week's show, it's the last show of the year for Social Media Lab Live. I'll be taking off the last 2 weeks in December, but I have twisted the arm of Jennifer Watson. She's our social media manager. Hopefully she has remembered that I twisted her arm. She's going to be the guest on the last episode of Social Media Lab Live for 2020. I'm not real sure what we'll talk about yet. We'll probably talk about things we've tested throughout the year. This year's been a lot of testing in social media, of course, and want to pick her brain a little bit and just kind of hang out with her. We don't get to hang out on shows a lot together, even though we work together. She's got her shows going on Fridays and one sometimes on Tuesdays in the Social Pulse community. So make sure you join us Next week for the Social Media Lab Live, make sure you go to agorapulselab.com anytime you want to check out anything that we have written here in the Social Media Lab. And we will see you next week.